Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Sunset Circuit podcast focusing on Bitcoin, friends, and fitness. Today we have special guest, Vake, and he's joining us to talk about Bitcoin. Can you give us a little background? How did your Bitcoin journey start?
Well, I got into Bitcoin around April of 2013. It was actually in the middle of a bull run at that point in time. I think it crossed somewhere around $100 when I first started hearing about it. And Bitcoin was actually receiving a little bit of mainstream attention. There were segments on CNBC and elsewhere. But I didn't really start buying Bitcoin right away. I spent several months researching it, and I kind of started buying it later in the year. And then it's kind of just been a continuous journey since then. Even prior to Bitcoin, I was really into the whole Austrian economics, libertarian, Ron Paul stuff. I was a big fan of Ron Paul in his 2008, 2012 presidential runs. From Ron Paul led me to Austrian economics and just reading a lot of Mises and Hayek and Rothbard stuff, and Tom Woods to his podcast. I was a big fan of Milton Friedman stuff. When I was in college many years earlier, I was an economics major. So I guess maybe I was predisposed to getting into Bitcoin, so it wasn't like a big leap for me, at least philosophically, ideologically. I was already pretty aligned. So really just had to learn kind of the technical side of it, the specifics, how it works underneath the hood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very nice. And what's kept you interested in it all this time? Was it the culture, the technology, or the friends you've made along the way?
I would say a little bit of all the above. I mean, obviously I've made friends like you and many other people. And probably most of my friends are Bitcoin friends now. I mean, I have a handful of friends from school and work from beforehand, but almost all the people I hang out with or talk to on a routine basis are in Bitcoin in some capacity. So yeah, the friends, the culture, I mean, Bitcoin it's this really weird, deep subculture, and even you and I are within some subcultures within that subculture. And then on the technology side, it's just fun to tinker around with. I've never been I'm not going to engineer or anything by training. I'm not a developer, but I do like tinkering with Bitcoin wallets, both on desktop and phone, hardware wallets, things like that. There's a lot of things you get to work on, experience with hands-on. I've even done a little bit of vibe coding myself.
Oh, that's awesome. And so this podcast is kind of geared, or at least loosely, around the people that are going to be coming to the Sunset Circuit race. I'm hoping, that takes off right now. We're about to head to the third one, and my goal is that over time the prize will get bigger. Like the more people come to it, the more money we have to give as a prize for the first place, and it'll be a Bitcoin prize. And if they get the wallet, the first week's winner didn't know how to use it. I gave her a ballet wallet. She still got the wallet, but she hasn't spent the Bitcoin off it. And then the next week, the runner was already in our Jacksonville Bitcoin meetup.
You keep an eye on the address of the ballet wallet that you gave her?
Well, she just told me that, that she doesn't know what to do with it. So okay. I said, well, just save it.
Sure.
Maybe that $15 will pay for, something.
Well, also, as the price goes up, it becomes more valuable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or she could add to it. But basically with someone like her in mind, her, Allie.
Absolutely, yep.
What would you tell them about, how would you explain it to someone like that when they say, the thing people say to me all the time is I've heard you talk about Bitcoin, I know you're into it, but I just don't really understand it.
People get intimidated.
Yeah. And why is it important for someone like that? How should they start their Bitcoin journey?
Oh gosh. Well, man, I've pondered this many a nights because I've tried to orange pill many people over the years. And I will say I've struck out 95% of the time. There's been a few people who did get in. I mean, I think some people have to have a predilection for it, unfortunately, and that can be a technical predilection, like they're an engineer, or they're a software developer, they have some technical know-how, or they have like me and perhaps you, a philosophical, ideological, predilection for it. Yeah, I mean, they're like libertarian or an Austrian economics, something like that. That obviously helps. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't describe the vast majority of people. So some people just have to, I hate to say, some people have to learn by getting burned. And when I say burned, I mean I believe that the fiat system is slowly degrading. I say slowly because we're in the United States, which is the home of the US dollar. So the US dollar it's the best of a bunch of bad fiat currencies, right? All fiat currencies decline and go away over time, but US dollar is just doing the slowest. So people have to kind of sort of figure it out and see the mess in the world and in their home country on their own to sort of, figure that out. But you can help them along. And so I think you have to think about the kind of person that you're talking to, right? If they're conservative, if they're liberal, if they're, getting onto politics at all. Each person, you kind of have to have a different angle on it. What their hobbies, what their careers, what their interest is. You have to sort of tailor the message to them specifically, right? But if you have to give your 2-minute elevator pitch to somebody about Bitcoin, I would just tell them it's a new form of money. It's unlike both metal currencies like gold and silver, as well as fiat currencies like the dollar, the euro. It is controlled by no one. It is exclusively digital and lives only on the internet. You can hold it, as much of it, from $1 worth of it to $1 billion worth of it yourself without the assistance of a third party like a bank. And you can send it to anyone in the world without anybody being able to block you from sending to that person. And those are very unique properties you can't find in other forms of money. And if we believe that better things beat worse things, including better money beating worse money. Oh, and also there's a 21 million coin limit on all the Bitcoin. That's an important component to it. They cannot inflate it past that point. It has a very rigid, regimented supply schedule, issuance schedule, maybe a better way to phrase it. So if we believe that better money beats out worse money, then over time it should predominate, right? Better technology, and money is just a form of technology, so better technology will beat out the worst forms of money.
Oh, that's one of the best explanations, like the short elevator pitches. You're very on point with
not
each
really
thing
enough,
and succinct. Yeah.
It is just a 2-minute elevator pitch, and if that's enough to get them, well, then you probably met someone who already had like a leaning in that direction. Yeah.
I've started just telling people to think, I probably shouldn't admit to what I'm saying, but when they have no knowledge of Bitcoin, I'll just say, just kind of think of it like the best like if you already buy stocks, just think of this as kind of another stock, but it's beat all the other stocks over the last decade by a lot. And then just dollar cost average a bit into it and just look at it as an investment the same way.
Service to email, going from like dial-up or phones in your house to smartphones, just any technological upgrade.
Yeah. And I just say put 10%, like if you're already allocating like a few $100 into the stock market every month, just take 10% of that and move it into Bitcoin. And maybe like I will caveat that with, I'd probably put more like 100% into Bitcoin rather than stocks. That's my conviction. But for you just getting started, that will be some, if you do that for 10 years, you'll be grateful. Hopefully.
I don't know how much people DCA stocks, but DCA does make sense.
When I was a mutual fund wholesaler, we always recommended to DCA stocks too.
So it's common outside crypto. See, I'm like of the right, I guess maybe I just got lucky. I'm the right generation where I just like went straight to Bitcoin. I basically skipped TradFi altogether. I had like a 401k at one point, and then I just dumped it and then put all the Bitcoin. But I mean, apart from that, I had no trad stocks, bonds, real estate, and none of it.
Nice.
Skipped all that.
And so the winner of this, today's race, they're gonna get $50. I think the way we talked about doing it is we'll load it on a ballet card, but you are generous enough to donate a cold card that will give it to them to take home and set up and, move the 50 off the ballet onto the cold card for long-term storage. Can you give a step-by-step guide of what they should do with it from there, like how to perform that transaction?
Sure.
Or where to find the right resources?
The way I think about Bitcoin security is it's all proportional to how much money you're securing, right? If it's just $50 or $500, maybe $1,000, without small to moderate amounts of Bitcoin, which is obviously dependent on who you are and how much income and savings you have. I'd say small to moderate amounts. You can probably, but definitely small amounts, you can keep on the exchange, wherever you buy it from, so Coinbase, Kraken, Cash App, River, whichever place you buy it from, whatever, $500, just leave it on there. It's not a life-changing amount of money, especially if you're an American, right? As you get to moderate amount of Bitcoin, so let's say that's a few $1,000s for you, where, if you lost it, you'd really be kicking yourself. Then you kind of step up your initiative and your drive and actually like self-custody it. So then, get a quality hardware wallet. There's many brands out there. Cold Card is like, I guess, what I've mentioned to you, but there's several good ones. I think Trezor's fine. I think the Foundation Passport's good. You can construct a seed signer if you're paranoid enough that you want to actually build it yourself and you don't want to be on a list for buying a hardware wallet, because you don't know if they retain customer lists and do something nefarious with it. So maybe just, what we call single sig hardware wallet, where it's just one device and you can maybe back up the seed, which is like the backup to all the funds on it. That's fine. That's for I'm talking moderate amounts of Bitcoin. Now let's say you get to serious amounts. Let's just hypothetically say $25,000 or more. Now you should start thinking about things like multi-sig, where you have multiple hardware wallets, or signed devices is another term for it, and keep them in different geographic locations, right? That way you have no single point of vulnerability. If someone were to come and threaten you, you literally can't give it up. You have your devices in many different locations, and it requires some X out of Y of them. So some people use 2 out of 3 hardware wallets, or 2 out of 3 keys you need to sign a transaction, 3 out of 5, 5 out of 9, whatever it may be. You don't want to go with full 3 out of 3, 5 out of 5, or whatever, because then you have no room for error in case you screw up and you lose a key. But multi-sig in general, as you get to much higher amounts of money, and then if we're talking millions of dollars, this is crazy amounts of money, then you need to maybe even add more keys to your multi-sig. There's also newer companies like AnchorWatch that can share your Bitcoin while you retain self-custody. You can put time locks on your Bitcoin where they're not movable until a certain future date. Just the complexity goes up as the amount goes up, and that can be because you stacked more sats over time, and also the value of Bitcoin goes up with each bull run, right?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that just take some self-custody as you get to slightly higher amounts, and then just proceed from there.
Yeah. I always find the self-custody. At first, I wasn't nervous of it at all. Sometimes I would type out, I don't know why I did this, but I would type out the actual seed phrase, rather than copying and pasted it. I would just had no, I was using paper wallets, but I wasn't concerned that it was actually your friend Remo who told me, well, that's not safe because the printer company retains a copy of it. And I was like, oh crap! So then I had to.
Yeah, your printer's taking that. So a good rule of thumb is for your seed phrase. So the Bitcoin wallet, you can back up with 12 or 24 words, which are called the seed phrase. Optionally, you can add a 13th or 25th word on top called a passphrase, which you generate yourself. The passphrase you make up yourself, and the seed phrase is usually generated by the wallet, although you can generate yourself if you so choose. You should never take a picture of it with your phone. You should never type it in or email it yourself, because if someone is able to get your seed phrase and your passphrase, if you so choose to use one, then they can sweep all your. It's as good as having access to your hardware wallet and the PIN to unlock it.
Yeah.
So you should always try to keep it offline, preferably keep it in a different location than your hardware wallet, because the reason why you're writing it down is to back up if your hardware wallet breaks or is lost. If you use a passphrase, I wouldn't store it with the seed phrase, maybe memorize it. The reason why the passphrase was conceived of is because some people might write down 12 or 24 words and just say leave it at home somewhere in a drawer, but then I put it in a safety deposit box, and maybe the bank employee gets into your safety deposit box, or maybe they call it evil maid attack. Your maid might be cleaning your house and they stumble across your seed words. Well, if you only use the 12 or 24 seed words, they can sweep all the money out of your wallet. So that passphrase will be the only additional barrier to them. So that's why you wouldn't want to necessarily keep it with the seed phrase.
Yeah.
Right. But all this is meant to back up your hardware wallet, which already has the seed phrase that kind of in it, right? Now, many hardware wallets, like the Cold Card, the Passport, newer versions of the Trezor, not the original first couple versions of the Trezor, have something on them called a secure element, which is like a chip that keeps your seed phrase very difficult, not impossible, but difficult to extract if an attacker steals the device. But there's a lot of nuances here.
Yeah.
But yeah, never take a picture, or never email or electronically store in any way your C words.
I've seen, just working as a lawyer, I've seen people come to me saying, this wallet, like, you know, they messed up, and it turns out someone got into their email and they had stored a picture in their iCloud or something, and that got hacked.
Yeah.
And
I'm not saying there are no malicious attacks from like the hardware wallet vendor. There actually have been malicious versions of Trezors mailed out to people and ledgers. There have been some malware uploaded by specific Ledger Lives app. But most of the time it's user error.
Yeah. But for the general user, it's certainly a higher responsibility than just keeping your money in a bank.
It's high responsibility. It's accessible for anyone that's even mildly technically savvy. I mean, you know, your grandmother who was like 9 years old probably won't be able to do it. But if you're like a person who uses computers and smartphones, this is not inaccessible for you as long as you follow a handful of very basic rules.
Yeah.
I took a video.
And so how would you recommend someone, like where would you usually recommend that they buy Bitcoin for the first time?
I don't think that actually matters too much. People ask me this, like, where should I buy Bitcoin? You know, Bitcoin, it's like, you know, should I go to the Citgo gas station or the ExxonMobil gas station or the Wawa or whatever? Like, it's the same gasoline everywhere, right? So it doesn't really matter where you buy the Bitcoin. Just out of ideological drive, I try to direct people to the Bitcoin-only exchanges, because Coinbase will lead you astray willingly because they want you trading on a bunch of garbage, right? So in general, I suggest, if you're in the United States, River, which is river.com. River Financial is very good. Cash App, maybe even Swan Bitcoin. Some of the Bitcoin-only ones are better, and they can, you know, help you set up a DCA very easily. You just enter how much you want to buy per day or week or month. But you know, even if you do choose to use Kraken or Coinbase or another multi-coin exchange, try to stick to the Bitcoin. Don't get into the shitcoin trading rabbit hole. It's like gambling. You'll lose all your money probably. You know, it's the same everywhere. The only thing that'll matter really that differentiates all these exchanges is the fees. You know, some might have marginally higher fees or lower fees, but I don't think it really matters. It's more important that you become consistent on stacking sats than really like the fees on it. They'll make very minimal difference.
Yeah.
Don't get into like decision paralysis where you spend, you know, weeks or months or years like just trying to figure out where should I buy it, because it really doesn't matter too much.
Just get some and move it off the exchange. And so another thing people often worry about if they're not into Bitcoin, things they've heard in the media is, you know, Bitcoin boils the ocean, or, you know, things about the environmental impact of the mining. Do you think Bitcoin is worth the energy it takes to create?
Well, in a very literal sense, it is, like on price terms, it is worth the energy, because the reward to Bitcoin mining is what economists call perfect competition. So on one scale, at the end, when it comes to markets, there's monopoly, which was only one entity providing service, and there's oligopoly, which is a handful. And the very opposite end of the scale is called perfect competition. So you can think of perfectly competitive markets like wheat or corn, where there's no one manufacturer that controls the market. Anyone can enter and exit it willingly based on whether or not they're making money off of selling it. Bitcoin mining is very similar. In fact, it might be the most perfectly competitive market. There's no barriers to entry to mining, so miners enter and exit as they're, as you know, if they're making money, more miners enter. If miners are losing money, more of them exit. So it quite literally is worth the price, because the amount of the money they make is conditional on the reward they're getting from the newly issued Bitcoin. I don't know if I explained that well, but I mean that's how they're rewarded. Now, if you're talking in a more general ideological sense, is Bitcoin mining worth whatever environmental impact it has? I don't think it has as negative environmental impact that you might think. Bitcoin miners don't release any pollution. They do use water to cool them. And then energy use, I don't view energy use as inherently evil. And it actually incentivizes the production of clean forms of energy, specifically nuclear. I think we're going to start seeing a nuclear renaissance because of Bitcoin mining. And the reason for this is because Bitcoin miners can be, turned up and down as needed by the miners. So a good example is in Texas, their energy grid is run by a company called ERCOT. It's actually segregated from the rest of the U.S. energy grid. And they have a deal with the mining company called Vake that if there's high demand for energy on the Texas energy grid, they power down their miners. And then when the demand is low, like at nighttime, they power them up. So it actually helps balance the grid. And this is actually very good for nuclear because I'm not a nuclear expert. From what I understand, a lot of the problems with nuclear is simply because you're powering up the nuclear power plant and powering down at night, because our natural energy use varies throughout the day. During the daytime, we use a lot of energy. At nighttime, way less. Because, people are sleeping, lights are off. Nobody's really, the factories are off, right? Nobody's at work, or very few people are. So energy consumption is a lot less at night. So it's actually a really good idea to power up the Bitcoin miners, and we can keep the nuclear power plant running stable at like the same level day and night. So it actually creates a more stable energy grid, and I think this has a number of very healthy benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Texas has really embraced it, and that ERCOT grid has really benefited from it, and it could be an example for other people to model.
It's drawn a lot of political ire from some politicians, like Elizabeth Warren and some others, but they're honestly ignorant. So I don't know. You can fight ignorance over time. Countries and states and cities will adopt it just because it's so healthy for the grid.
And with what they've been doing with the flared gas, that seems like it was.
That's another one. Yeah, so they've had mining rigs to these oil rigs, I guess it's what we call them. And instead of flaring the gas into the atmosphere, they capture it and use it to power miners. So that's actually reducing pollution.
Yeah. And I've seen lately people are heating their houses with like just solo miners, and one solo miner recently got a whole block reward. Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. And even also in rural areas, there's a lot of hydroelectric power. And unfortunately, because it's in rural, like middle of nowhere, there's not really much of incentive to develop it because there's no civilization nearby. So, but you can attach a Bitcoin miner. You can run a Bitcoin miner anywhere in the world as long as you have access to energy and internet connection, because they have to communicate with the network. So we can actually develop a lot of power sources in remote areas, hydroelectric, like natural gas flaring, that were not previously profitable. Yeah, it's opening up a whole world of opportunities. Absolutely. But I did get a call a few months ago from an attorney that was talking with another parent near a school, and they were saying there's a Bitcoin miner across the street, and it's they wanted to sue the mining company, saying there needs to be maybe there needs to be some easements, they can't be this close to schools or certain residential areas or something. And easements, perfectly reasonable. What does the saying "stay humble and stack sats" mean to you? Yeah. So as far as stay humble, it's very difficult to stay humble in Bitcoin because it's very volatile. So to me, staying humble just means you can go on a tear where the price goes up 10x, and then the next year it'll fall 85%. You have to kind of remain even keel through it, and this is very difficult your first 1 to 2 bull and bear cycles. If after a few cycles you start to get used to it, but don't FOMO buy, throw your life savings in as it's soaring up, and then also don't panic sell or dump when it's down 85%. You just have to remain even. That's why stacking sats or DCAing is a very preferable manner of purchasing, just because you're taking emotion out of the equation. So that's kind of the staying humble part. Also, just don't get cocky about stay humble about your self custody, right? Learn, you need to understand, there are always risks to how you secure your Bitcoin. You want to consistently be improving how it's held. Yeah, that's the hard part, staying humble through all the run ups and crashes. And then stack sats, just be consistent about it. It's like I think of a lot like going to the gym, right? Just because you went to the gym yesterday doesn't mean you have to go to the gym. You don't have to go to the gym today, right? It's a thing you have to do day in, day out. So stacking sats is the same way. Just set up your DCA and go purchase every week. And then once you reach that certain threshold, sweep it to your cold wallet, to your self custody. Very good. And what does the term toxic Bitcoin maximalist mean to you?
I used to consider myself a toxic Bitcoin maximalist.
Me too.
I don't say, I don't call myself that anymore. I'd say just more like a Bitcoin rationalist, or I just say I'm really only interested in Bitcoin. I'm not really toxic towards other stuff anymore. But what toxic Bitcoin maximalism was a reaction to what we term shitcoins, which is like, all these other cryptocurrencies from Ethereum and XRP, which, amongst them, some of them are just really, really awful, like XRP, and then some of them are kind of like tolerably awful, like Ethereum, and then there's some actual decent. I'm not telling people go out and buy them, but I think Monero has interesting technology. I think Zcash has interesting technology. Toxic Bitcoin maximalism was just sort of a response to the craziness of the crypto world, the ICOs, the NFTs, the DeFi, the scamming, the pump and dumps, just all of it, and just saying, hey, I'm just going to stick to Bitcoin, which I think is a perfectly reasonable response to it. I'm going to stick to Bitcoin. I'm going to tune all this other stuff out. It kind of went over into like calling everything a scam, without, very black and white, not really, whereas the real world is shades and gray. Mm-hmm. But that's what the toxic Bitcoin maximalist movement is. I mean, I think it's okay to be a little bit toxic of a Bitcoin maximalist. Just don't be like an obnoxious Bitcoin maximalist.
Yeah, and now it seems like the really toxic ones have moved over to the not side.
Yeah. That's a whole issue unto itself.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time to get into all that if we're going to make it to the...
We're not going to solve that debate tonight.
The Bitcoin community often promotes stake. Why do you think that is?
STEAK?
Yeah, like eating meat.
Sure. So we're not talking about proof of stake, which is how Ethereum and several other cryptocurrencies, but stake, the meat. This all started with, I think, Safety Moose was probably the one who really promoted it. He's the author of the Bitcoin Standard, which is a very popular book in the community, and he's also a very famous carnivore. Him and Bitstein are very, and then everybody else kind of latched onto it. I guess the premise here is that steak is and the carnivore diet is a very low time preference diet. You're cutting out all carbs and sugars. You're subsisting purely on protein or meat and fats. I'm not here to tell you whether it's the perfect diet or not, but I guess the premise is that it's the healthiest thing you can eat. Also, I mean, there is a little bit of a parallel to Bitcoin because Bitcoin obviously runs on proof of work, which means real energy has to be input into creating Bitcoin. Cows are kind of similar. You have to grow a cow over a very long time. It has to be fed consistently. I mean, I presume for years or more before it can be, slaughtered to make steak. You can't just make cows and beef and steak, willy-nilly. It has to be grown over time, as opposed to like other more like processed foods. Yeah,
and I kind of thought of it too as like it's a little bit back to the toxic Bitcoin maxi part, but like Ethereum, the soy boy kind of image, and then the Bitcoiners they eat steak,
They're more manly than I guess.
Yeah, but I don't know. From becoming a Bitcoiner, I've definitely upped my steak intake, but I feel way healthier.
I can't say 100% carnivore.
Oh no, me neither.
I love a slice of cheesecake or something every once in a while, but I definitely up my protein intake.
I did a video so you can just snap whatever.
What other health trends do you build into your daily life?
I struggle with it just like everybody else. I do work out pretty consistently, but I'm fortunate I have a trainer I work with several times a week. I do some running on my own, run some few races. The dieting is the part, I'm just not very consistent about dieting. There's no trick to health. It's just doing all the little things right? Exercising, eating healthy, being disciplined about both exercise and diet, getting good sleep, trying to avoid as much alcohol and drugs and tobacco and all the other temptations that we have in life. There's no trick per se. It's just live as healthy as you can.
It's another proof of work kind of thing that you just have to do day over day. Yeah.
But one thing that I have noticed in Bitcoin is that people are a lot more serious about their health than the general public. I'd say Bitcoiners really do seem to take the low time preference lifestyle that seriously.
Yeah. What's something you're really excited for in the next 12 months?
see in life. Sorry, I just don't have.
It's all good.
Yeah. In the Bitcoin realm, I will be to go to some Bitcoin conferences. You know, the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas next 2026. Look forward to that. It was fun this year as well.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that one too. What are your favorite Bitcoin podcasts?
Of course, the Sunset Circuit podcast is number one, of course. You know, I'm in a different phase of my Bitcoin journey than most people, so I don't necessarily use my necessarily the ones that everybody should listen to. If you're a little newer to Bitcoin, then I just said, you know, what Bitcoin did, which was formerly Peter McCormack, but eventually the new host of the service, Peter's Vake is perfect, it's fine. I think Tales from the Crypt, Rattle, Recap, Marty Bent, Matt O'Dell's good.
Yeah,
Natalie also is a podcast on City Up Dispatch. Stefan Rivera's, although he goes a little more technical. NDK, who's the CEO of CoinKite, which makes the cold card, had a very technical pod, which he doesn't do as regularly now, like Bitcoin Review, Issue every episode, all the updates across various wallets. Oh, Bitcoin Explained. This is with Aaron Van Werden, who is an old school Bitcoin journalist, and Shore's Produce.
I know Shores.
Shores is a Bitcoin core developer, so it's like I call it the Jedi Council of Bitcoin. They just pick a topic every episode and they go through it, and it's something like silent payments or it's Bitcoin core or 30 in their most recent episode. And they kind of, I like to go to the technical nitty-gritty stuff just because there's only so many times you hear about sound money and fiat is evil before you get tired of it. But perhaps somebody new Bitcoin needs to hear that, that message, that ideology drill. My advice is just don't stay stagnant, right? Don't just, listen to the same people in Bitcoin. Try to go a little deeper, try to get your hands a little bit dirty, or at least a little more dirty as time goes on. Delve into how does it work. Don't look at it like just look at some miracle and it's a perfect machine. There's a lot of nuances and trade-offs.
And it's continually changing.
Yeah, it's changing. It's not a rock like the right? It changes over time. The Bitcoin today is not the same as Bitcoin.
Yeah. I've really been enjoying it. I think you recommended this to me first, the Bitcoin Bugle. It's a funny podcast, but I feel like it would be a good one for people to start with because they're kind of Bitcoin in a parallel universe.
They're the Bitcoin focus, so they're kind of very parallel to Bitcoin. They have a big event in Vegas this past year, this past May.
Oh, nice.
There. Well, yeah, they're very cool. They don't really go into much technical topics. They kind of that's all.
Yeah. I guess you kind of have to understand the technical side, well, a little bit, or the background of the history of some of the characters to maybe find it as funny as like some of the jokes.
They make fun of the portrait.
But I've really enjoyed that one lately. So the last question, so for this event coming up, and just in Bitcoin in general, there's the OPSEC side. Like, we're hosting a running race. Typically, running races are not a high security event. I mean, there was a shooting at the Boston Marathon years ago, but but a lot of Bitcoiners that have asked to come to the event have said no because they're worried about their OPSEC. And my husband, I'm taking photos at the event, and he's told me a few times, you really, I don't know if you should be taking pictures on the internet about the Bitcoin event. But I'm thinking at conferences, these pictures, I don't know, I was just curious your take on what the best practice, what the best practice and what a middle ground, or what do you think of that?
The Spain crypto data is very recent, and social that is better self-custody. And then, I'm by this right now, but don't talk too much about Bitcoin, at least, don't tell every stranger you bump into a bit, but maybe people in your immediate circle, but not many people beyond that. Don't share the coffee shop or Bitcoin is Bitcoin practice, people get ideas. Like I say, secure your Bitcoin well. If you have a sunset now, use wisely, you can to secure it properly. While not giving up essentially what basically was never tell anybody what you have, never tell you how you secure your Bitcoin, your keys, don't be too flashy. That's a good fancy car, bling, Rolex and stuff. That's kind of what else? Obviously you can't hide your gold forever. Especially if you have a public facing business or something. So obviously gold will be down there. You can say, well, I'm not going to take Bitcoin because if you go to Bitcoin conference, so you get the right now. There's a bar.
That's kind of how I feel. Like you have to just live your life and hope for the best, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Please look at the laws of your local jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Move to a gun-friendly jurisdiction.
And then I had a few lightning round questions. What's a hot wallet you would trust for your lunch money?
So if we're talking on-chain Bitcoin, which is your good fashion blockchain, I think it's relatively new. It's in terms of UX, it's very smooth. It's very well thought out. Having said that, a lot of places in Bitcoin will try to pay with the network. And so your options are a little more scarce. Probably best for while retaining yourself custody of the Bitcoin is fixed wallets. They operate over Lightning wallets. Besides that, which is also in the United States because obviously other than that, I like that a lot.
What do you think is the most overrated myth about Bitcoin?
Bitcoin doesn't fix everything. It fixes a lot of things. A lot of the problems that maybe problems are solved faster when we have a bit more information. Yeah, maybe that's
question of who is Satoshi Nakamoto. Where did this come from? Who is this person? I mean, this is the 2000s. Information is out there, everything. Everyone knows everything about everybody. How can there possibly be a person that nobody knows who this guy is?